Before I get on with this review, I have a few people to thank. The first one is Scruff. If you watch my video game account, you already know who Scruff is. The reason I'm thanking him is because the gun you see in this review is actually his gun. He lives over in New York and graciously mailed his gun to me just so I can make videos of it, which is a pretty cool thing to do. Keep in mind I live in Portland, Oregon, so he mailed his gun all the way across the country. The second person I need to thank is the Pro Cause, who just made me a new background for my Airsoft account, which I kinda have been needing for a long while as I'm trying to fade out the Red Dragon Airsoft name because I don't run that business and I haven't for the last few years. Which reminds me, if there's any other graphical designers that want to make me a new intro that does not say Red Dragon Airsoft but is similar to the one I already have, basically something that's almost identical to the one I have but instead says Jarek and professional airsoft content, something like that, then that would be much appreciated and I would be sure to give you a shout out. Alright, enough rambling, enjoy the review. Hey guys, Jarek here and welcome to my review of the Maruzen gas blowback VZ61 Skorpion. Now like I said, this is Scruff's gun and Scruff actually got this gun used, so I don't have the original box this gun comes with, nor can I confirm the original parts this gun comes with. What I can say is that this gun will at least come with the gun and a 30-round magazine. I can also confirm that R2 Skorpion boxes, JG Skorpion boxes, and Tokimori Skorpion boxes work great for transporting this gun to and from games. As I mentioned, Scruff got this gun used, and you basically have to if you want to get one of these guns. They've been discontinued, and other than the rare odd batch that shows up for about a week on Red Wolf Airsoft, you basically cannot find them brand new. If you do ever find that small batch that shows up for a week on Red Wolf, I can guarantee you it won't last farther than a week, and then the gun will be gone for months on end. So if you want to buy one and you see it on Red Wolf, don't even think about it and just buy it, otherwise you will completely lose your chance. Actually, while we're talking about this, it does look like Red Wolf Airsoft does have a batch in as of right now. Like I said, this will not last long, and now that I'm giving it more attention, it'll probably last even shorter. The price is only $170, and for a Japanese-made gun with very high supply and demand, that's a ridiculously good price. Unfortunately, the trade-off is $50 magazines, which is somewhat expensive. But this is literally the only gas blowback Skorpion on the entire airsoft market, so I guess it's entirely worth it. And no, you cannot find drum magazines for this gun, as they have never existed. Believe it or not, I did get that question asked quite a few times. As for the gun, the quality is actually quite remarkable. The externals are mostly plastic, but they are incredibly fooling. If you just looked at this gun or even picked it up for a short period of time, you would swear that the gun was actually made out of metal. But it's not, it's made out of very durable plastic that can really take a beating. In fact, on the front of this gun, you can actually see where a BB hit it. What's even more fooling about this gun is that the internal actually seems to have a metal frame. This is no doubt to get past Japanese law saying a certain percentage of your gun needs to be made out of plastic. But nonetheless, it really shows how sturdy this gun is. Aside from the internal frame of this gun, anything else that needs to be made out of metal is made out of metal. The selector switch, the mag release, the bolt, and any pins keeping the gun together are made out of some high quality metals. The selector switch gives a nice audible click, making sure you know you're on semi, full auto, or safety, and the trigger breaks nicely for some smooth operations. The bolt is a decent chunk of metal that has some pretty heavy, smooth feeling recoil for such a small gun. The way this gun kicks feels very authentic to the real Skorpion. And just like the real Skorpion, this gun is really fun to shoot. You can just plink around with it all day long. It's also important to mention that if this gun is on safety, you cannot pull the bolt back, so do not force it. Take the gun off safe, then cock the gun. Otherwise you'll break something. Quality control for this gun is through the roof. There's a lot of small polishing touches on this gun, including a fake texture on the plastic that looks very believable, even though it isn't actually there. This gun does indeed have some trademarks, although not many. It has the usual characters on the selector switch, a unique serial number. On the other side, it does have Maruzen's name on it and say 6mm and made in Japan, but it does seem believable enough. On all the extra magazines you find for this gun, it will say Maruzen VZ61 Skorpion on them. Despite this gun having some fake trades, it does look very, very real. If you saw this gun laying on the ground, you would merely assume that it's a real Skorpion. It simply just has a lot of really small, subtle polishing touches. There's no gigantic white trades, the textures aren't overdone. It just looks really smooth. Disassembly of this gun is literally identical to that of a real Skorpion. Simply eject the mag, fold over the stock, remove the front pin, and the upper receiver comes off the lower receiver easily. From here you can get access to your trigger grouping or your bolt. If you'd like to get further access to your bolt, you'd simply have to pull out the two cocking rods on the side, and then you can take the bolt out of the upper receiver. To put this gun back together, it's as simple as sliding the upper receiver back on the lower and reinserting the pin. Now this gun was made for the Japanese market, so it was made to run off HFC 134A gas, or the American workaround to that, duster gas. It wasn't really made to run off such high pressurized gases as propane. Now this gun actually does handle that quite well for being a Japanese gun. You won't break it if you use propane, but you'll definitely have a few repercussions. The first one is just because the way this gun disassembles. If you fire this gun using high pressurized gases like propane, you'll slowly rattle the upper and lower receiver apart. Now the gun won't fall apart in two pieces, but it will rattle itself apart just enough so that you can't pull the trigger and the gun will not fire. Obviously you don't want that happening, but there is a pretty easy workaround to this. The most common and easiest way I've seen is to simply take a zip tie and zip tie the upper and lower receiver through the trigger guard. With that said, I don't want to have to cut off the zip tie every single time I want to clean my gun. So I prefer the alternate approach of simply just putting a tight rubber band underneath the stock and over the rear sight. Although I would recommend using a black rubber band instead of a bright blue one, even though you can blame Scruff for that. Now this gun does actually have a working, functioning bolt catch. As you can see in this clip, it worked perfectly fine. And that's how this gun is supposed to work to a dime. But when you're using heavier gases like propane, more often than not, the bolt catch simply will not engage. Higher pressurized gases mean this gun is going to have more recoil than it's supposed to be able to handle. And for the most part, this gun handles that masterfully. However, the rear sight is merely screwed into the upper receiver by two small screws. Eventually, the screws are going to get loose and the threads are going to wear away and cause the rear sight to pop off. So at some point or another, you're definitely going to have to come up with a permanent solution to this. Now, can I really consider these things to be cons? Not exactly. We're doing the exact opposite Maruzen tells us to do. We're using gases that this gun was not made to work with. So any repercussions the gun gets from that is entirely user error. Not the gun's fault, not the company's fault. As all these negative things definitely will not happen if you use either duster gas or HFC gas. With all of that said, I'd really like to reiterate, this gun runs perfectly fine off propane and will not break. You get a few minor hindrances here and there, but really that's the worst of it. Maruzen simply managed to make one reliable and tough gun. As for the sights on this gun, the Skorpion has never really had amazing sights, and they're about what you would expect out of them. They're not the world's best, but they do their job. The magazines for this gun are fairly authentic to the real VZ61 magazines. They hold 30 rounds, and they're pretty good at gas conservation. Although, as I've said before, $50 a mag is a pretty steep price. So if you want to buy this gun, you're going to need a few extra mags, and you better save up your money. Possibly the biggest and coolest advantage to a gas blowback gun is just its authenticity. On the left, you have a JG VZ61, an electric AEP. On the right, you have a Maruzen gas blowback Skorpion. Now just by looking at these two guns in frame, the biggest and most obvious difference you'll see is the quality difference between Maruzen and JG, but that's expected. JG is a Chinese clone company. However, when you start comparing these guns side by side, you start to see the biggest difference between gas guns and electric guns, and that would be the dimensions. Gas guns are usually, not all the time, but usually 1-to-1 scale, as this Maruzen gas gun is, where electric guns are usually more on the fat side. Say, an electric gun would be Dallas, and a gas gun would be Portland. I'd like to point out that parts from the Tokyo Marui designed AEP Skorpions will not work on the Maruzen gas blowback Skorpion. But if you're missing a stock for your Maruzen Skorpion, a JG Skorpion stock will work on the Maruzen. In fact, the stock you're seeing right now on the Maruzen Skorpion is a JG stock because when Scruff got this gun, it had no stock. So we just slapped a JG stock on there and it worked. When I chronoed this gun with propane and 0.2 gram BBs, it seemed to average roughly around 300 feet per second. Since the ideal situation for this gun is close quarters combat, 300 feet per second is the butter zone for this gun. You definitely don't want it shooting any hotter or it will be illegal in CQB, but you don't want it shooting any weaker or it'll simply just be too weak. Although 300 feet per second is not ideal for woodland, it's definitely respectable enough to take into woodland games. I can easily see you putting this on a 1-point sling and having it hang down on your side as your secondary. It's definitely going to beat the hell out of anyone else's weak, puny, pathetic pistol. It's also important to mention that this gun was made for the Japanese market, so it's made to run off duster gas, although it does do a pretty good job running on propane. Now I don't have any confirmation of this, but I can give you an educated guess that this gun's going to run roughly around 250 feet per second with duster gas. When I tested this gun's rate of fire, I found that it fired around 1,000 rounds per minute. Now for woodland, this may be a little bit too high, but for CQB, which again, CQB is this gun's ideal situation, this is once again in that butter zone. In CQB, you want your gun to have a high rate of fire, but you don't want the rate of fire to be too high, as that would just be overkill and you run out of ammo way too quickly. If you want your gun to sound threatening, this gun sounds threatening enough. Given everything we already know about this gun, we already know it's going to be a complete beast in CQB, so I immediately took it back to 100 feet to test the accuracy. At 100 feet away, the targets were absolutely no problem to hit whatsoever. The hop-up did its job very well, and you can see the BBs floating in just a complete straight laser accurate line. However, on full auto, the accuracy did seem to suffer a little bit. Not enough to really mess up your shot, but you did start to see the burst getting a little bit inconsistent. Either way, 100-foot targets are a complete pass for this gun. When I took this gun back to 150 feet, I could hit the target, however it was painstakingly obvious that this gun simply does not have the power behind it to consistently hit this target at this range. Don't get me wrong, you can do it, but I definitely would not want to do that in a game. Chances are you'd end up being spotted before you actually hit the person you were trying to shoot. And at 150 feet on full auto, don't even try it. You're basically going to be doing the literal definition of spray and pray. With all that said, this gun definitely exceeded my expectations when it comes to the accuracy, and I'm still surprised at how straight the BBs were flying, which is a clear indication that the hop-up unit is of very good quality. If I had to give an estimate, I'd say this gun's max effective range where you hit the target time after time is 120 feet. Not too shabby coming from your secondary or your primary for CQB. So final conclusion of this gun. Well, I love the Skorpion. It's always been one of my favorite guns, and it's just one badass little gun that's a ton of fun to shoot. So I had very high expectations on Maruzen for making literally the only gas blowback Skorpion on the whole market, and sometimes it's not even on the market. I'm happy to say that not only did Maruzen not disappoint, but they entirely blew my expectations out of the water. I honestly cannot think of anything bad to say about this gun. It has a good feet per second, a great rate of fire, is definitely accurate for its size, attention to detail is most noticeably there. It's even reliable enough to handle propane when it's made to run off a Japanese HFC gas. I could simply keep going about all the good things about this gun, but I'll stop myself right here and simply tell you if you happen to run across this gun, buy it then and there. It's one of the most badass guns in the airsoft market, and if you like Skorpions, it's an absolute must-have. That about sums up my review of the Maruzen Gas Blowback VZ61 Skorpion. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, Jarek here, and I'm going to be giving you a first look to Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Now what is Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon? Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is a standalone expansion for Far Cry 3, and this game is a glorious throwback to the 80s. Especially a glorious throwback to Terminator. In fact, they brought in one of the guys that originally helped make Terminator, and brought them to help make this game. This game is set to come out on May 1st. I'm going to be giving you a first look and a full playthrough of this game, and I'm begging you guys, when this game comes out, fully buy this game. This game is definitely worth your money, and it's pretty awesome. Oh, come on. Not you too, Red Wolf. Seriously? Are we doing this?